shared a bed with Dodi every day of his life from 2 to 13, after his mother left. When you hear things like that, you know how close they were.
Despite lasting 6 months and claiming to be an in-depth investigation, the inquest failed to find answers to many basic questions regarding Henri Paul. If he really was a chronic alcoholic, this would have been diagnosed during the stringent medical examination he underwent 3 days before the crash while renewing his pilot's license. But he passed the medical with flying colours. So why wasn't the doctor who gave him a clean bill of health called to the inquest or ever interviewed by the police? Why did Britain's top policeman, Lord Stevens, tell Henri Paul's parents in 2006, in front of other policemen who kept a written record of the conversation, that their son was definitely not drunk?
He asserted that Henri was not drunk on the evening of the accident and that he was driving at a lower speed than indicated in the French proceedings.
That is totally what Mr. Stevens told us.
Yet 6 weeks later, Lord Stevens published a report claiming that Henri Paul was drunk. So, who was lying, Lord Stevens or Lord Stevens? After the crash, the police searched Henri Paul's apartment twice.
2 searches were made of Henri Paul's home by the French police. More alcohol was recorded as discovered on the second search than on the first.
The first time, all the police found was an unopened bottle of champagne and a quarter bottle of martini, which hardly supports the claim that he was an alcoholic. So the police returned a few days later. And, would you believe it, this time they claimed to have found enough alcohol to stock an entire bar. Beer, wine, Ricard, bourbon, vodka, port, champagne, cassis, Pinot...
There is no obvious explanation for this. You must consider whether there are any sinister implications.
Some might say that, on the contrary, there is a very obvious explanation, and that its implications are very sinister indeed. The inquest heard undisputed evidence of Henri Paul's links to the French Secret Services, the Direction de la Surveillance du Territoire, and to Britain's MI6.
I just remember reading this file and thinking it was interesting that, first of all, they had a Frenchman working for MI6, because it's actually quite rare to find someone who is French who are prepared to work for MI6, because they quite often don't. And secondly, because I'm a pilot myself, I remember this particular person having an interest in flying.
So why did the coroner tell the jury in his summing up that Henri Paul had no links to the security services? Henri Paul's bank accounts show he received a total of 350,000 French francs of unexplained income during the final months of his life, mostly from checks. Why didn't the inquest establish who had written those checks, or examine the transactions made on Henri Paul's 5 credit cards, or allow the jury to see his mobile phone records? Why did Henri Paul go missing from the hotel for 7 minutes at 10:36? Was he meeting an accomplice in the Place Vendôme? What about the gesture that Henri Paul made outside the Ritz moments before driving off in the Mercedes? Was it a signal to an accomplice? If the inquest had failed to answer 1 or 2 of these simple questions, you might put it down to incompetence. But its failure even to ask many of them can only have happened because the authorities already knew the answers and wanted to keep them hidden. Henri Paul was not drunk and was working for the Secret Services on the night that he died. Day 68. The only senior representative of the royal household to appear at the inquest was Sir Robert Fellows, the Queen's private secretary. On day 68, while under oath, he had the following interchange with Michael Mansfield. Were you on holiday at the time? I was on holiday from somewhere around the first week of August. Until? The week after the death of the Princess and Mr. Al-Fayed. And I went back to Balmoral on the following Sunday, I think, after the funeral. So, would it be fair to say that you were not, in fact, therefore, at the palace or nearby when all of this was happening? I was at the palace, certainly, until the end of July. Fellows unequivocally told the inquest that he was on holiday for the entire period before and after Diana's death, and did not return to work until after her funeral. Now, let's move to January 2011, and the publication of the diary of Tony Blair's press secretary, Alastair Campbell. 31st August. At about 4 a.m., I got a flavour of the royal establishment's approach when I had a conference call with Robert Fellows. You know about Diana, do you? She's dead. It was all very matter-of-fact. 1st of September, meeting at the Lord Chamberlain's office, attended by Robert Fellows. 2nd of September, 10 a.m. Fellows and I had a discussion. 3rd of September, Fellows called early. 4th of September, I had another discussion with Fellows. 5th of September, Fellows said we had all worked well together. Far from being on holiday, as he had claimed under oath, Fellows was at the very centre of Diana's funeral arrangements, overseeing her burial throughout the week. Fellows was the man that Diana had described to friends as one of the 3 names that I fear. He hates me. He will do anything to get me out of the royals. Sir Robert Fellows was made a lord in 1998. This little boy is called Philip. His full name is Philip Schleswig-Holstein-Sonderburg-Glucksburg, and he grew up in Germany. He was raised amongst his Nazi in-laws, some of whom later became high-ranking members of the SS. His Nazi relatives then sent him to this school in southern Germany, where he studied for a while under the Nazi curriculum. Philip later recalled that there was much heel-clicking and shouts of Heil Hitler were compulsory. And here's Philip, in Darmstadt, in the heart of Germany, in November 1937, attending a family funeral for some of his Nazi in-laws. Marching in front of a Sieg-heiling crowd, this is Philip, next to Christoph, his SS brother-in-law, and Philip, his Nazi stormtrooper brother-in-law. Imagine if a man with a past like this had somehow ended up marrying into British aristocracy. Well, he did. And as we know, he got first prize. He became the Duke of Edinburgh, also known as Prince Philip, after marrying Princess Elizabeth, the future Queen of England. British lawyers have warned us of 87 legal issues concerning this film. Several of those warnings concern the following interview.
I think Prince Philip is somebody who is devoid of any internal sense of right and wrong. So deep down, he cares nothing about anybody else. He regards everybody else as potentially a threat. He is completely selfish. And that is very like Fred West or any other psychopathic individual.
Oliver James is one of Britain's leading clinical psychologists. Yet lawyers told us that we could not include his professional diagnosis of Prince Philip in this film. So we looked for the current medical definition of psychopathy and discovered